Right. You know what it is. You know who it is. We are back with another episode of the BG Perform podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about supplements and if we think they're worth the money, which I think we kind of have the same consensus on. We won't give
hmm
away the answer yet, but we're going to have a 30-minute AMTAP today, as much talking as possible inside of 30 minutes. I think we have to be more strict about it. I keep saying it, but maybe today's the day. We go 30 minutes and we cut it off at 30
Yeah,
minutes.
let's just go bullet points.
Yeah,
We'll go
we're
bullet
gonna go.
points. We'll add the little spice, and then we'll just. If you
So
have any
today we're gonna be
additional
talking
questions,
about,
just send us a message.
yeah,
That's what we'll go
exactly. We're
about
gonna
it.
be talking about if supplements are worth your money. What are the main supplements that most people take or are usually recommended? Why do people usually take them? How are they beneficial and are they actually beneficial in, a bunch of ways? And then are they does supplement timing matter and safety in supplements because that is a big issue as well. I don't know if it's an issue as much as an excuse in sports, but you see that a lot inside of
hmm
sports and athletes who are like, "Oh, I didn't know what I was taking." It's like, all right, bro. Sure you
Yeah,
didn't.
sure.
There was a needle in my creatine.
You know they always tell you to check your creatine on Halloween night. Somebody put a needle in there.
So stupid. But we're gonna start this clock and we're gonna get started in three, two, one.
Bang.
Let's go. So, supplements. I think
Ooh.
supplements are a huge aspect of the fitness industry, and I think I'm sure if we actually looked at the numbers, the supplements would actually get us to that billion number because I feel like the fitness industry is like such a big business by itself. Like I think I shared a post not too long ago. It was like I don't want to overspeak, but like $40 billion industry or 20
It's
billion dollar
growing
industry.
too. Like it's not
I don't
slowing
even know.
down.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I think for a long time, and I remember when I first started in the fitness industry, like even when I just started first working out, and this was 2010, like when I like first went to a gym. Then 2011, maybe it was just like it wasn't like I do now, but it was just like bro workouts in high school, things like that. I remember really after I lost a bunch of weight and I was going, well, this was like as I was losing a bunch of weight, bodybuilding.com was huge, and we've talked about this a couple times, and
Mhm.
the golden era
We
of
will
fitness is what it
forever
is.
reminisce on the golden era of bodybuilding.com.
It really
It
was
was
like it
so
really was the
good.
greatest website ever. And
One of the greatest downfalls ever, too.
yeah, they had everything. They had all the supplements, they had all the programs, but supplements was one of the biggest things. And I remember you just going on there. I was like going to Toys R Us, like as a
hmm
kid, but it was like supplements. It was, they had everything. Gold Standard, Gym. What else was there? There was
Jacked.
Jacked. There was every influencer at the
Optimum
time. Let's just put it this
nutrition. Oh
way.
yeah, that's gold
Yeah,
standard. Yeah.
yeah.
Muscle
Every
farm.
influencer at the time had their supplement out there. And I remember specifically there was a couple that I took that when I say fucked up my stomach, fucked up my stomach. I
Bro, do you
remember I
remember
took
me
this
getting
protein.
hospitalized?
Well, yeah, oh yeah, I remember you went. Yeah, yeah. Jerry had like a tachycardia attack because he
No,
took.
no, it wasn't that. You go through your thing. I'll tell mine really fast
Oh,
after.
okay. All right. Well, tell me that after. I thought that was the tachycardia. But anyways, um, I had this inner armor. It was protein that like had creatine and BCAAs and like mixed a bunch of shit in it. And it was like $30 for like 50 servings. And me and my friends got it. Me, Nick, and Sam all got it. And we started taking this stuff. And at first we were like, all right, that's like this isn't bad. And then within like 2 days of taking it, I had the worst diarrhea for like 2 weeks, and we couldn't figure it out. But like, we didn't talk about it. Like, none of us
Maybe it's
talked about
that
it.
powder that tastes
So,
like fucking rainbow and
so we were
sunshine.
like 2 weeks in. Each of us were like 2 weeks into taking it, and we were in the middle of a workout. And Sam was just kind of like, "Is anybody else's stomach like fucked up?" And we were just like, "Yes." And we were like, "It must be Inner Armor." So we we just kind of like forced ourselves. Well, I don't even know, but like we were just like, all right, let's just finish it. Let's try to finish it. I don't even know if I could have finished it or if I did finish it, but that was some of the worst protein I've ever had. But I'm gonna let you tell your story in a second. But that was what we were dealing with on bodybuilding.com. It was just a crapshoot of supplements. Every influencer had their supplement.
Yep.
Every influencer had something they were backing up. But go ahead, tell them.
Yeah, dude, mine I ordered there was a whole like Muscle Farm kit for sale. So you got the
I remember
protein,
this.
the pre, the post, you get
Hmm.
multivitamin. Like it was such a good deal. And Muscle Farm was one of the biggest brands back then. I don't
Me
think
and
they
Nick were
sell
talking about
the
that the other day. They had a chokehold on the fitness industry.
Yeah, dude, and I don't think they sell the pre-workout Assault anymore. And it assaulted me, dude. I took it. The first time I took it, it was great. No reaction at all. So like I had my shit from all the caffeine and I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to the gym. It was a leg day and I got like a PR on deadlift that day. I was super happy, which was probably looking back to the age I was doing it was probably like 135 pounds. It was probably nothing. But the then the next time I took it, I was like, oh, I can't wait to hit chest with this because I used to do legs on Saturday and then start off like Sunday or Monday with chest. So I remember I went to the gym, or I not went to the gym. I went to the kitchen. I made the shake. I took it and I was like, all right, here's the poop coming. I know how it goes. And I was on the toilet and I was like, whew, I'm getting hot. I was like, what is this? And then I started to feel like my neck was burning and my arms, and I was like, ooh, oh, maybe I'm just like, it's a lot of caffeine. And I looked at my arms and they were red. And I was like, oh God. And then like everything started burning. My
Oh wait,
legs started
I
burning. And I
think
was
I
like, oh my
remember
God.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I gotta wipe and get the fuck out of here. I called my mom on her phone from the bathroom. I was like, Mom, I think I'm having an allergic reaction. I'm wiping. I need you to take me to the hospital. And she was like, oh my God, what did you do? And I was like, I don't know. I'll talk to you in a second. So I get downstairs. And if you know my mom, she's freaking out the entire time. She's like, "What did you do? Like, what? Oh my God, you're gonna kill me. You're gonna give me a heart attack." And I'm sitting there, and I'm in the car, and my ass starts to burn now. So I'm like, and I can't sit in. I unbuckled my seatbelt. She goes, "Put your seatbelt back on." I was like, maybe 17, and I was like, my ass burns, Mom. We gotta go. We gotta get there fast. So she's driving. I'm like uncomfortable in every single position possible, and we get to the hospital. And they were like, yeah, you definitely had an allergic reaction to this. Let's see the ingredient list, all that stuff. So like I looked up the ingredient list, I gave it to them. They got me hooked up to an IV and it's trying to basically they're essentially trying to fight it, but also like filter everything out. And I told them when I got there, this had a lot of caffeine in it. I need to pee. And then they wouldn't let me go pee. And then another doctor came in and I was like, I have to pee. And they were like, all right, we'll get you to go to the bathroom soon. I was like, you don't understand. I have to pee. He was like, "We'll get you soon. We just got to get you this IV or whatever." I was like, "I've had it." He leaves. Another doctor comes in, and I'm shaking from having to pee. I was like, "Dude, I'm hurting. I need to pee." He goes, "You haven't gotten to go yet?" I was like, "You guys won't let me go." Dude, I filled up 800 milliliters of piss, and the guy came back. I put it on the table. He goes, "Was that you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "You feel better?" I was like, "No, I still need to go." He goes, he opened his eye, he went like that and leaned in. He went, and I was like, "Can I get another one?" And he goes, sure. And everyone left the room and I filled that one up halfway. So fucking 800 and then 400 milliliters of fucking piss, dude. It
I
was
can't. How'd
so
you stop
much.
yourself? How'd you stop yourself to get to the next one?
Dude, because
Just
it was gonna overflow. It was just like it was a little fucking tube and it went up. Like, I don't even know how, it was like a little thing and it went like that so you could pee into it. Dude, it was rough. But yeah, then I never took Muscle Farm again and I had all these supplements that I just returned because it almost
I
killed
think I
me.
remember. I remember when you had those in your house. But so there's your answer.
Yeah.
No, but so obviously, like this is the thing, and this is why we're having this conversation because supplements can be very they can like so this is the tricky part about this kind of thing. And even when you go to like like a CVS or a Rite Aid or whatever, and you buy like, vitamin D or fish oils, things like that. A lot of this stuff is not regulated. So there's not really people looking over it, right? So when you go to get some of these supplements, whether it be a multivitamin, whether it be, like I said, a fish oil, a lot of times the fish oils aren't high quality or they're not fresh, right? The vitamins aren't, checked after or kind of maintained or even seen if they have the stuff that they're supposed to have in it. And the protein powders, especially like these big supplement companies, like they're not FDA regulated. So there's no one kind of looking at them and being like, all right, what actually is in here, and how much of what you say is actually in here, right? And there's been a couple big lawsuits throughout the years, whether it be Inner Armour was one of them. Like I think Inner Armour was one that said it had like 25 grams of protein, and when they actually did the testing, the way they built the formula was like 80% branched chain. So it was actually not like
It's
any
called
type of
amino
protein.
spiking.
Amino spiking, yeah. And it was like
Yeah.
5 to 10 grams of protein per serving, and the rest was like amino acids and creatine and whatever else happened, right?
Probably crack cocaine
Um,
in there.
yeah, who knows? But and I
Fentanyl.
remember also Nick was telling me we actually had this conversation. So Nick had a protein that he had bought called Russian Bear. And it was like it was supposed to be like a mass gainer. And it was like well, it
Oh
was like
no.
5 servings in a bag. Like 5 servings per bag, but the bag was like this. Like it was huge and
Was
you
it
were
like
supposed to
six
like
scoops per serving?
yeah, it was something ridiculous like that. It was like so for those of you who don't know, like during this time, I'm sure it's still big, but during this time, like in the supplement industry, that like anything, it was like the wild, wild west of
Yeah,
shit. They
dude.
were just coming out with anything and putting someone's name on it and saying it did all this shit, and we were taking it. We were we were doing it. We weren't even
We were
thinking
taking it.
twice. We were just we were like, oh, Russian bear. This sounds healthy. Let's do it.
Yeah. All the
And
essentials.
all the essentials. And so to kind of bring this back in, right? Like supplements can be very helpful, right? And there's a lot of different supplements. There's protein powders, there's pre-workout, there's post-workout, there's creatine, there is like magnesium and multivitamins and zinc and what else?
We got
There's fish
greens,
oils,
fat
vitamin D,
burners.
yeah, fat burners, vitamin like greens, like he just said, athletic greens, things like that. And I want us to focus on one word, right? Supplements, right?
Hmm.
Supplements are to supplement us, right? So essentially, all that really truly means is that if we are not able to get them inside of our diet, we then go to supplementation to assist in getting that because it's easier and it's more effective, right? What we don't want to do is real, and this is where someone like myself during that time, or someone like Jerry during that time,
Hmm.
like, and anybody who was, again, on the great bodybuilding.com, the lore of bodybuilding.com was more than likely relying on supplements to get to certain levels of protein intake or food intake. And I think that this is part of the thing that we didn't understand as kids. And, why would we? But, they're supposed to supplement, right? You're supposed to be eating real food. And then at points when you can't fulfill that, then you turn to supplementation to help. What do you have to? Yeah, I know you're looking
It's
at something.
just, I'm just laughing at the fact that like how many things, like jacked pre-workout, it was the word Jack and then, or the name Jack and then three capital D, jacked,
Yeah.
was literally like killing people. And it was, they were selling it on like every fucking
Basically
website.
ketamine. It's just
Yeah,
basically
dude.
ketamine.
Yeah. Oh my God. So it's just, yeah, no regulation. I
And
just was trying to hold back
I
laughter.
mean, I joke, right? I joke, but like this is part of the reason why with supplementation it's not regulated is like stuff like this happens. There's been a lot of supplements that
Yeah.
they're not made in the same places, they're not made in safe places, clean places. So it's like they mix shit. And these are just like they're getting made by companies who are the cheapest and they make a bunch of other shit inside of those facilities. And sometimes like they've done some tests on this stuff and there's like um performance enhancing drugs that are like found mixed in with some of these supplements, or they like you said, they amino spike, they do things that aren't necessarily proper to have inside of a supplement, and you as the consumer are paying for a product, then you're getting that product and it's not exactly what it says, right? And
Hmm.
that's the biggest issue, that's the overarching issue that we find inside of the supplement companies is that one, they overpromise completely and they're like, oh, take this supplement, you're gonna look like Kai Green. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
like and again, it's the same thing. That's the funniest thing of bodybuilding.com was like that was what got us. It was like Kai Green
Yeah.
on a bottle, and we were like, oh, maybe I can look like that. It was
Yeah,
just
dude. The amount of times I saw Steve Cook and I was like, oh, one day I'll
one
be big
day.
man on campus. This is gonna be good. And then, nope.
It's not to say you can't. It's not to say you can't. It's just not going
Yeah.
to happen from the supplement, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think like people take them for a reason. Like people take them because they're easy. People take them because, it is easier than consuming and tracking things and keeping track of all the food that you are eating on a daily basis, right? Like popping in a protein shake or popping in a multivitamin, things like that. Like it is easier. And I think
Mm,
there are some vitamins and minerals that we should be taking consistently, like vitamin D. I don't think a multivitamin hurts anybody realistically, right?
no.
And I think that like creatine is one that we'll get to in a little bit that everyone really realistically can and should be taking on a daily basis. But this is like we have to know what we want to take and we have to know if they're helpful and if they are helpful, like how do they help? And if they're not, why don't they help? Right. And I think when we kind of dive into this stuff a little bit deeper, it's again, it's we have to focus on the word supplement, right? We can't
Hmm.
be focusing some of these things as like the main aspect of our diets. And I think that like starting with protein, right? Because protein is probably the most well recognized or used, I guess, supplement that you'll hear inside the gym community. And it's probably the most common one I get asked is like, all right, what type of protein powder should I use? And most of the time, at this point, I personally like, I'll be 100% honest, I don't really use supplements anymore like that. Maybe I just, used it so much when I was a kid that I just kind of got over it, or I don't know, they're expensive. Sometimes they're fucking expensive now. Like
Not even
there's a
sometimes. They're all
I
way
won't.
too
I know.
expensive.
I won't call them out because I really like the people who have it. But like, there's this one company and they're like $60 for 25 servings, and it's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
it's
It's
yeah.
nuts, which is unreal. But anyways, not only are they expensive, but you want to focus on eating this stuff first. You want to get your protein from real food. You want to get your vitamins from real food. You want to get all these things from real food. You want to hydrate yourself. Then at the end of the day, if you still feel like you need a little bit more protein or you're working out a little bit harder, or in my case, right? Like right now I'm running a lot. So it's like I need some little extras in carbohydrates. So I've been either turning to like a Gatorade or I've been turning to an electrolyte mix or something like that because I need it because I'm running so much and I sweat a disgusting amount. So
Yeah.
like by the time I'm done running, like today I wore a sweatshirt and sweatpants when I ran outside and I sat in the car and I was like, fuck, I don't have another shirt. And my whole
Yeah.
seat was just soaked and it's disgusting the amount I sweat. So like for me, especially like when I sweat, I probably lose a lot more liquids and sodium and electrolytes than the average person because so much like I lose so much sweat in my workout. So I have to replenish that. And that's where supplementation, where it's fast acting, I don't have
Hmm.
to kind of like turn to, something that might take a while to cook. Like it's just boom, take it, done, right? And that's where this stuff really kind of allows us and aids us inside of our fitness. Where it doesn't aid us is when we're just lazy and we're like, I don't really feel like cooking. I'll just have a protein shake, right?
Yeah.
Or, I don't really feel like, whatever. I'm just gonna take this vitamin and not eat, or I'm gonna eat a meal replacement shake or some stuff like that. Like that's another huge aspect of it. Like I remember when meal replacement shakes were like the big thing, or meal replacement
Circa
bars.
2012, 2013,
Yeah, when
they
there
were
was
all
like
over.
protein bars that were like 600 calories, and you're supposed
Yeah.
to be like a meal replacement. Um, but yeah, so I think like a lot of this stuff, that's the biggest thing is like supplements can be very helpful, right? Like protein can be very helpful for someone who either struggles with getting all the food down or someone who needs to eat a lot more than they want to, right? Like there's
Hmm.
some people who just like Jerry, for example. Like Jerry's had a lot of um the like you've been trying to gain weight for basically you've always been trying to gain muscle mass, so like he
Hmm.
always has to be in a caloric surplus, right? So
Yeah.
there's going to be some times where he needs to consume an extra protein shake, right? Or an extra two protein shakes or extra calories, and that's where supplementation might help him because he just can't like stomach the food, right?
Yeah. A good example
Also,
for that was when I was working at a gym. I had two 30-minute breaks in a day, but I was there from starting training at 7 a.m. and not leaving until like 9 p.m. I had two 30-minute breaks to eat. So I was eating a lot in those 30 minutes. And then on top of that, like in the morning before I even got there, I'd have a like 1,500 calorie shake that I made at home. And then at 8 p.m., I'd have another 900 calorie shake. And then I'd eat again on the way home so I could just go to sleep and get back to work. So like those busy days make sense.
yeah, and that's when you use that type of stuff, right? And I think that's when it can be very beneficial. But I think if you're using them to make up for bad habits, that's where supplements can get in the way, and that's where they can harm us and they can not benefit us as much as realistically as we need them to, right? And I think that like for us, the next question is like, are they essential? And to me, they're not, right? Because I haven't taken supplements in a very long time consistently, right? And I think, there's a lot of things that probably could be considered supplements, but I think that like for the most part, we're talking about like a protein powder, like we kind of ran through in the beginning, a pre-workout, post-workout, creatine, that type of stuff. And, I don't think they're essential. I really don't. And I think that sometimes they're played off as essential and they're priced accordingly, and they're kind of forced down our throats as like something we need to be taking when it's just not the case, right? And like I said, I think, for example, up here in New York and really in the northern hemisphere, like vitamin D is a huge deficiency in most people, right? So it's very beneficial for us to be taking, you know large doses of vitamin D every single day,
If
right?
you
Like,
work inside, no matter where
yeah,
you
if you
are.
work inside, like,
Yeah.
especially for like people with ourselves with like lighter skin, it takes a lot more sun than like a darker skinned individual to actually get that amount of vitamin D that we need, right? So it's like we have to find that way to supplement and get us to that level so that we're not dealing with that stuff. So, like, for example, if a lot of people who are listening to this struggle waking up in the morning, right? That's usually a side effect of being deficient in vitamin D or
Hmm.
lacking that sunlight exposure, and that's why like sunlight is so important. But if you don't have it, you can take vitamin D and you can, kind of streamline that and get to that process and then use regular sunlight, not to make up for it, right? Not, oh, I'm taking vitamin D and I have to go outside. It's like, no, I'm taking vitamin D and I can go outside, which is going to be even better for us. Right. And that's where supplementation is that's where we kind of need to like that's my usually my go-to example for a lot of people when they're like, well, how do I use supplements? It's that right there, right? If we
Hmm.
know there's a deficiency that's very common amongst people in a certain subset or group, and we know that we can aid that by not only taking the supplement, but then also going outside and combining the two, that's supplementation, right? That's
Hmm.
how we get healthy and that's how we advance ourselves. On top of that, right? Like each one is useful for something different, right? Like again, vitamin D is useful for energy. It's useful for a lot of things. Protein is useful for muscle protein synthesis, so repairing the muscle fibers, making sure we're getting stronger. There's things such as pre-workout, which is energy, right? It's caffeine. It's sometimes beta alanine. It's things that open up the veins and get blood flow in and allow us to really work on like we were talking about before, me and Jared, before we hopped on, getting a pump, getting ready to work out. Sometimes caffeine is a stimulant, right? It's a drug, it's a stimulant, but like it's a very useful stimulant, right? And it can help us in getting that little extra inch, right? But what happens now? Caffeine, people abuse caffeine. They take it nonstop, night and day. Then they don't get the same effects. Then they have to take more. Then they have to take more. Then it ends up being like two monsters a day, three Red Bulls a day, three whatever, six cups of coffee, whatever it might be. And then you don't get the same effects, right? It's using it
Hmm.
in the doses that make sense, that allow us to aid in performance, right? Because that's what we're trying to look for here. And like on the everyday person, aid in performance may not be the main thing we're worried about, but staying healthy and aiding in just being healthy is what we're looking for, right? Anything to add to that?
Especially when it comes to you touched on the essentials and whether or not to use certain ones. I know real like right now, electrolyte packets are huge. Everyone's
Yeah.
taking them. Like they wake up in the morning, they take it immediately. The like if you're trying to like save money and really get the biggest bang for your buck, you don't necessarily need to be taking those every day if you're staying hydrated. But those workouts where like Brandon and I are both big sweaters, like after an hour of striking, I'm sure if you take your shirt off and drop it on the floor, it makes a fucking plop noise. Like that's how much we sweat. So
Yeah.
it makes sense in those situations to have an electrolyte packet. But if you're going to the gym and you're doing even like a regular lifting workout, you're not sweating that much. Yes, you're using electrolytes and stuff, but you probably don't need to replenish with a full electrolyte packet because that's like
Well, you
when
got
you're
to think too, like,
depleted, take it.
but like even that, right? Electrolyte packets, I believe, are fine. What you don't need is like a Gatorade.
Yeah,
What you
with all
don't
the
need is all the
sugars and stuff.
sugar,
Yeah.
right? The sugar, like the salts and things like that, like those usually aren't the issues, and most people are probably dehydrated anyways. But like
Hmm.
the issue and what Jerry's saying, and I'm not saying Jerry's wrong because that's I don't want you to take it that way. What I'm saying is that like most people aren't like as much as we see the subset of people that use those electrolyte packets, most people are turning to a Gatorade or a Powerade or something like that, right? And there's so much sugar in there that it's for someone who's training very, very hard. Just because you work out doesn't mean you need to drink a Gatorade,
Yeah,
right?
90 to 120 minutes of just like sweating. That's what Gatorade is for.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like that's where, the electrolyte packets, the salts and things like that, they're not necessarily like bad. And I think most people can benefit from them a ton, especially like Jerry
Hmm.
just said, like take him in the morning, taking him before bed, that type of thing. But when you're using, Gatorades after you go for a walk, it's like, all right, well, that's not the point of that stuff. Like
Yeah.
you need to understand that like there is a workload balance that needs to occur for you to then need to rehydrate or resupplement with the things that you just lost, right?
Hmm.
So what I want to kind of do at the end here, well, we'll talk about one more thing, and then what I want to do here is go over just like a couple main supplements. I want to talk about creatine and then caffeine quickly, a little bit more in depth for people. But so one thing, does supplement timing matter? I don't you know, I would say yes to a certain degree on some stuff, right? Like you're not going to want to take pre-workout before you go to bed, right? Like
Yeah, that's
that's pretty basic one, like you're not going to want to take a stimulant before you or a mental stimulant like caffeine or something like that before bed. But for the most part, everything else is usually like hit or miss, like
hmm
there's research that's been done on like needing to get protein in 30 minutes after a workout. Like I usually go like if you can, great. It's gonna help. If not, it's really not gonna make that big of a difference, I think like if you have everything on point, but like if you're worried about intaking protein after a workout, but you haven't slept in 3 days, it's like, what kind of fucking conversation are we having here, right?
yeah.
And I think that like it's not to say supplement timing doesn't matter. It's just like where are you on the spectrum of like getting fitter? And I think that like with supplementation, if you're at that level, it can definitely help. And I think that's where the little details are in this stuff. It's like if you're at that level and everything's in order and you have everything else right, and it's like I can have this protein after and increase its absorption and then increase my recovery, then yeah, that makes a ton of fucking sense, right? And I'm sure that if we got to or I know for a fact if we look at the science, there is a best time to take that kind of thing, right? But when we look in the grand scheme of things, is it worth spending $70 on a supplement to then take directly after when it's like you can't, you're not sleeping, you're not eating real food, you're stressed out of your mind? Like, is that actually helping, right? So I think for most of us, does supplement timing matter? No. But I think for some high level individuals or people who kind of have their shit together or have everything else laid out, then yes, it can definitely matter and it can definitely help, right? Anything to add?
No, that was good.
Good. And then the last little thing is safety, right? And this is what I was saying in the beginning is like we have to be careful what supplements we buy. And now there are a lot of websites. I forgot there's a main one that I can't remember what the name is, like a third party testing site um that kind of shows I want to say it's like
I think I know what you're
mu-
talking about. I'm gonna see if I can find it.
see if you can find it, but there's a website out there that kind of gives a brief list of like all the top proteins, all the top creatines, all the top things that actually have been tested by a third party and shown like what the level or the rating is. And that's really important. And I think like, because
Are you talking
you
about
don't want
NSF?
it might be I feel like it was called like my something or like my testing or my
I'm
um
not sure. I don't know.
if I find it I'll post it on Instagram. But I think like I said, I find one of those websites. And even if it's that one, NSF, whatever it might be, and just look on there, use a third party tested website that's going to show you like what supplements are clean, which supplements are the ones you need to be using, which ones don't you need to be using. And that way you know what you're buying because you don't want to buy these cheaper, you know, with these cheaper supplements with like shitty qualities or shitty ingredient lists and things like that.
Hmm.
And the more we can avoid that, the better off you're going to be in general when you do use the supplements, right? I think even when we were younger, you saw the allergic reaction or our stomach issues when we were having this type of thing is like there was no regulation. We weren't looking. We were just looking at the label and be like, "Oh wow, this looks sick." Right? Like this is Muscle Farm.
Oh, it's
I want to
fucking
get fucking
holographic, dude. Look at the way it catches the light. This label's awesome.
it's gonna make me jacked. Or when
Yeah.
Arnold came out with like the Muscle Farm protein, I was talking. That's what I was
Yep.
talking to Nick about the other day.
Alongside the Arnold Blueprint program,
Hmm.
right?
The
Yeah.
Arnold Blueprint. Yep. So like that type of thing is, it's marketing, right? But I
Mhm.
think with most of us, how it usually goes is that we we don't need it if we're not taking care of everything else. And I think that like the safety is the biggest thing, and make sure you're buying it from a place that you can trust, right? But before we end this, so main two things, right? So like creatine is probably the most studied and
It is the
tested
most for sure.
supplement. Yeah. And it is probably one of the most beneficial supplements everybody can take for brain function, for muscle function, for neurological function, right? And what we mean by that is like neurologically when we start to lift, a lot of that is neurological like signals, right? And the creatine can actually enhance and improve those signals that occur from the brain to the muscles to produce force. And creatine, what that really helps with is from that like 30 to 90-second range of movement. So, we're talking about like heavy sets of bench, heavy sets of squat, sprinting, things that are like high output. Creatine is really beneficial because it uses what's called the creatine phosphate system. But like creatine is part of that process and helps us with like short energy. If it's not really, we're not going to feel effects in regards to like, you know, anything really longer than that. But what it's going to do is it's going to allow us to, again, get stronger, produce more power, and it's going to help us overall with a lot of neurological and main functions of the body. And I think that for creatine, for something as simple as creatine, where there really, as far as I know, there is no side effects, right?
No, they've been trying to find negative side effects, and there were a couple studies that have been disproven.
Yeah, I mean, just some little things, like it's essential for energy metabolism for ATP. I'm just reading some notes I wrote down for ATP rephosphorylation. So basically, what that means is like when we when we do movement, right, and we create movement, we break down ATP, which is energy, and then creatine helps us kind of rephosphorylate that or remake ATP, which then we can have for more energy in the body. Maybe we should call it there and we'd be strict.
No.
Okay.
We went on story time for a little bit, so we took away like
Yeah.
a couple
But
minutes.
yeah, increase with strength and power. And as far as we know now, there are no side effects, right? There are no negative side effects except you have to spend money to get it. That's really it, right?
Yeah, and
But most of the time you
it's a
can,
very cheap supplement compared to
yeah,
other
most of
ones
the
on the
time you get like a
market.
5 pound bag of creatine for like, I don't know, 30 bucks, maybe 20
Yeah,
bucks.
30, 40 bucks, something like that for
You got
five
on
pounds.
Amazon, something like that.
Yeah.
Creatine monohydrate, and you'll again, you maybe not feel benefits, but you'll be able to lift more, and most of it, like you'll find a lot in meat. And if you don't eat meat, like if you don't eat red meats or things like that, I would definitely recommend supplementing with creatine. It's going to help, right? And the last thing is obviously like creatine. So creatine basically, or
I was gonna say, you
caffeine,
mean,
obviously,
yeah.
yeah, caffeine is a stimulant, right? So we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but creatine and caffeine are very beneficial to us in the correct doses, right? And caffeine, essentially what caffeine does is it so there's like these receptors on um our cells, and basically they collect uh I forgot what's it called like specifically. I want to say it's called adenosine. They collect
Is it?
adenosine, but basically like caffeine blocks that process. So every time you take caffeine, it
Mm.
kind of blocks that process of adenosine buildup on the receptors, right?
I'm seeing the chart. I feel like I'm
I,
sitting in class right now, and I could see it
I
on
believe
the.
that's what it is. I'm almost positive that's what it is. If I'm wrong, you can correct me. But so basically, as you take caffeine, it blocks the receptors from actually collecting adenosine, and so you don't feel that drowsiness. Essentially, what happens as we get tired throughout the day, these receptors collect adenosine, and then that's when we start to get drowsy and we start to get really tired, and then we sleep and they get cleared off, and we basically start that process again. Caffeine limits that process, right? It also basically increases like our neural capacity to like output, right? Because it blocks that. It decreases our ability to our it decreases our rate of perceived exertion, right? So it makes what we do feel easier, right? Because of that extra energy. But like, and this is what I'm trying to explain is like caffeine doesn't like give us energy. It kind of just stops us from getting tired,
Yeah,
if that's the best
yeah.
way to explain it, right?
You feel like you're getting energy because your body is not allowed to be tired.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what it is.
And along with that, it increases like our work capacity, it increases our endurance. It also, and like the recommended amount for actually, let me go back to creatine quick too. Like, so 5 milligrams a day is about like the amount you'd want to take of creatine. And then with caffeine, one of the recommends amount that
Wait,
I
isn't it
kind
five
of wrote.
grams?
What?
It's not 5 grams.
Creatine?
Yeah, I
That's what I said.
think you said milligrams,
Oh, sorry, 5 grams.
right?
Yeah, it's 5 grams. 5 grams.
Yeah.
Yes. 5 grams of creatine uh per day. And you can also like load that if you need to. I think I
Mhm.
was looking at the caffeine part that I was about to say on the
Probably, yeah.
notes that I wrote. But caffeine is a little bit different. So caffeine's 3 to 9 milligrams per kilogram of body weight about 60 minutes before training, right? So that's specifically for performance. For you, like, I've heard Huberman talk about it, like kind of wait 90 minutes to have the caffeine. I don't know. But like most of us don't have 90 minutes to wait in the morning. So,
Hmm.
somewhere around 150 to 300 milligrams is really going to be like that upper limit, the 300. And 150 is going to kind of be that minimum limit, depending on how much you weigh to have like those effects or that feeling. But both those are very beneficial, right? And I think those are the really only two supplements that I think most people take, already because they use caffeine on a daily basis or abuse caffeine on a daily basis, I should say,
Yeah.
myself included. But I think that creatine and caffeine are two of the biggest, most important. And I really think that's it. I think outside of that, everything else is kind of a crapshoot, whether you like it or need it. If it makes you feel good, I think that's also beneficial. I think protein can be beneficial if you're not eating enough. Um, but yeah, anything to add?
Two things, one for creatine, one for caffeine. Creatine, Brandon mentioned it very quick. Monohydrate. Anything other than monohydrate is pretty much a scam, and it's agreed that it's pretty much a scam by every researcher out there. So monohydrate is going to be the one you want to go for. And then for caffeine, the dose dependency depends entirely on your response to caffeine. So like someone like myself, I only need a little bit to feel like I can run through a brick wall, where my mom can have it at 10:30 at night and then fall asleep. So
Yeah.
like it depends entirely on you and your physiology. So
I
if
think
you
the best
see
the best brand of creatine is called White Monster.
not an ad. But the if you see a supplement and you're thinking about trying a caffeinated like pre-workout for the first time and you're not really used to, you're not a coffee drinker, nothing like that, start with less than recommended just to test it out because you might be someone who has 300 and then you don't leave the bathroom for 40
Oh, bro.
minutes.
I remember the
So,
first time I had 300 milligrams of caffeine. I was at a powerlifting competition. This was like
mhm.
5 years ago. And so to be completely honest with you guys, I hate coffee. I don't like the taste of coffee. I've never liked the taste of coffee. So I never really had caffeine in any capacity until about 5 years ago when I started drinking highballs. So highballs were
Mm.
like a
200 milligrams of caffeine and then 50
no, they were
milligrams
only
of
they were only 160.
160 and then it was like
Yeah,
50
something
of
else, but whatever.
yeah.
So they weren't that bad. And there was like carbonated water. That was all it really was.
So
I don't
good.
know if they stopped making Highball. They were so fucking good.
Yeah.
If they ever bring them back, I'm gonna have to look and see. I don't, hopefully they didn't go out of business or anything. But anyways, so I was drinking Highball, and I started. That was it. And then I went to a powerlifting meet when I had my first gym, Thrive. I remember going there. It was like a rain stand. There was like a rain
Yeah, that
thing.
I was
They were
gonna
like,
touch
"Oh,
on
have you ever had
rain.
a rain?" I was like, "No." And they were like, "Try this." And it was orange creamsicle. I remember cracked it open. I was like, wow, this tastes fucking good. And I drank it. I drank the whole thing. And I was sitting there and I was just like, and I just felt my hands like shaking. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like 3/4 of the way through the rain. And I looked at the back of the thing. It said 300 milligrams of caffeine. I was like, oh shit. And I just
Yeah.
like, my hand was like this for like 20 minutes before I could calm down.
Bro, I swear to God, before you mention rain, I was going to mention the dose dependency matters, but also all forms of caffeine for some reason are not equal. Because I could have 200 milligrams of like like a ghost energy and feel good. I could have
Yeah.
150 of a rain and start fucking shaking. So I don't
Rain might
know.
be cracked. Rain might
It
be
might
some.
be. I don't know what they put in it, but that's another
Maybe
thing
they have
is
something else. I don't know. Like
yeah.
sometimes with ingredients, it might just get in faster. I don't know. But
That's
grain
what I mean.
hits.
Like if you're
Grain
trying a
hits
new
different.
form of caffeine, you have to like
Yeah.
ease into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's right. Take your time. Go through that. White Monster is the best. And if you guys have any questions, as always, reach out because this is a touchy sub. Well, I wouldn't say touchy subject, but like
Makes us cry.
there's a lot of people who what?
I said it makes us cry. It's very touchy.
He said, well, I mean, like some people are so like, you know,
Oh,
they
they'll
get
defend supplements until the day they
yeah,
die.
yeah, they
Yeah.
get really hooked on supplements and like I don't again, I don't think they're bad. I just think there's things that we can spend our time and energy and money on that are better to help us with our
Mhm.
fitness. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in as always, and I will see you guys next week. Peace. Where's the end? Where's the end?